We've got more stressed teachers as well. If you have all of these things happening to our children, more children who have behavior problems, more children who have learning disabilities at school, more children who are depressed or anxious or fearful, none of those children do well sitting in the desk at school, and they don't do well on academic tests, and then they might need more special education, which sucks up the resources of our local school districts and puts the taxpayers and our communities in a bind. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have special education, but what I am saying is we must provide the tools and resources for all of our teachers to deal with these issues that are happening to them. And just saying, well, you need to solve this problem and the children in your classroom should achieve at very high levels regardless of those problems is complete, utter scientific and practical nonsense that our grandparents would say, you know, if a child is in trouble, they won't do well at school. More and more of our children are using psychotropic medications than almost any country in the Western world. This is a graph of 3 countries. In the United States of America, 7% of our children are on psychotropic medications. Now remember, 50 million people do not have health insurance and are most certainly not getting those medications in America. But let's turn to 2 European countries, Germany and the Netherlands. Those 2 countries have 2.9 and 2% of their children using psychotropic medications, and they have universal health insurance for every citizen and resident of those countries. So in theory, they should have many more of their children taking those medications. In those countries, they provide universal access to the kinds of behavioral vaccines and scientifically proven strategies for parents and teachers that are demonstrated in studies to reduce the behavior problems, the psychiatric diagnoses that then lead to the need for those drugs and medication. And most importantly, we now know that many of those behavioral procedures have lifetime effects. For example, I'm involved in a study at Johns Hopkins University. And at Johns Hopkins, we have been testing, exposing children to an intervention in 1st grade only that teaches them how to control and self-regulate their own behavior. And we've now been able to show that that intervention, for instance, reduces the use of cocaine and other illegal drugs by 75%, and it actually prevents the psychiatric diagnoses that lead normally to psychotropic medications. Now, what if every teacher in America had access, if he or she wanted to use that same inoculation to protect all of our children? The world would be a better place, and we would certainly save a lot of money. Now, America has little money in the bank. We cannot afford to sustain these levels of problems. But by the same token, we cannot afford not to do something. We must rise to the issue of providing prevention for everyone, just in order to assure our well-being of our children and our families, but also, and very importantly, to preserve our economic competitiveness in a world where the rest of the major countries that we're dealing with have the kinds of things I'm talking about, and those things are available to every family and every teacher in many of those countries, but not ours. Now, the current conditions in America are creating a sort of assault on the fundamental brain chemistry and behavior of America's young people. I don't have time to go into all of those details, but we have a word that we are now using to describe what is occurring to all of our young people in America, and to our children, and to our futures, to all of our futures. We call that euthanasia. Euthanasia means the unconscious and conscious policies and practices that are leading to the illness, whether it be behavioral, physical, emotional, or spiritual, and death. That's called morbidity of our children today. And I think everyone listening to this knows that this is happening. We've seen it, we felt it, We know it's there. The question is, what do we do about it? Because if we don't do something about it, the data show that it will get worse. And that would be a tragedy, considering all of the most important science in the world that shows how we could remedy this problem was done right here in this country, paid for by my tax dollars and your tax dollars to find those solutions. But other countries are using those inventions and ideas for their kids and families, but we aren't. Now, I'm sorry, but we cannot afford a political world wrestling competition about this. We cannot allow our politicians to put on uniforms and costumes and beat each other up as if this was some sort of contest between liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans. This has nothing to do with that. This has to do with your children, my children, and all of our futures. Now, what if America could really greatly reduce all of these problems and challenges using proven science at a very low cost and create sustainability? I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that that is entirely possible, and I'm going to give you concrete examples of when and where it's happened and how we might do that. Now, this is an example of a systems level thinking. We need systems of behavioral supports for teachers and families and communities. We don't need just one little program over here or there. Right now, your physician or pediatrician has basically two choices. Say that it's a phase, which means they don't really know what to do about it, or two, to give them some of those free samples that the local drug rep dropped off. Neither one of those solutions is satisfactory, but if you're in the Netherlands or Germany and you go to your doctor actually knows strategies there that were invented in this country or subsequently derived from research in this country to help families, to help teachers. So, what we need are those brief tools available widely. We need narrow focus tools. Sometimes a child or a family or a teacher needs something more. And then sometimes there are very intensive things that are needed. But this is the most important thing for us to do right now for prevention for everyone. And we need to be able to make it self-directed. We need to be able to it happen in a one-to-one relationship, in a group, and in community settings. We most importantly need universal access. This is completely different from the prevention rationing models that we have been doing, of selecting risk and protective factors and saying only those people or that community or that school get it. This means it's available to all. Now, you might want to know, can that really work? And would the people who most need it actually take advantage of it? Well, the Institute of Medicine issued a report on March 25th, 2009. Now, this report was about the prevention of mental, emotional, and behavioral problems in our children and youth. And I'll just review a couple of things that are specifically mentioned as well as a few other things later in my talk today. One of those is the impact of a universal parenting effort that is now found in places like Netherlands. In fact, you are only 15 minutes away from any potential provider who could help you with parenting in Amsterdam.